Hello, everybody. This is Greg Alexander. Welcome to the SBI podcast. I'm thrilled to have a chief executive officer on the show today to talk about content marketing. Yes, you heard that right. A CEO with expertise in content marketing. David Ciccarelli is the CEO of voices.com, and his business is fueled with great content. So this is an area David has developed deep expertise in. You have the rare treat of hearing about content marketing from a CEO who understands the power of content to drive his corporate growth strategy. So if content marketing is of interest to you, if you're a CEO, you're going to love this. If you're a marketer or sales leader who needs to convince your CEO of the power of content marketing, this show is for you.
From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Greg Alexander.
Welcome to the SBI Podcast, a weekly broadcast dedicated to helping you make your number, but getting your peers to share with you how they're making theirs. Today we're going to demonstrate how to earn brand preference by satisfying the information needs of your target customers and prospects. So why this topic? Producing and distributing content for everyone means you're really doing it for no one. For content marketing to generate revenue, you have to know exactly what your customers need, where they need it, how often they need it, and in what form they need to consume it. Miss any of these items and others like them, and your content marketing efforts will fail to contribute to revenue growth in any meaningful way. My name is Greg Alexander, and I'm the CEO of SBI, and I'm your host. And joining me in the studio is my co-host, the lovely Melissa Valdez. And Melissa's here to point you to resources to advance you along the way of making your number. So Melissa, welcome.
Thank you for having me, and welcome to our listeners and viewers.
All right, and helping Melissa and I today with our demonstration is an executive who knows a lot about this topic. His name is David Ciccarelli, the Chief Executive Officer and founder of voices.com. So David, welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hey, Greg. Hey, Melissa. Thanks for having me on the show today. Great honor. I might be maybe different from some of the other guests in the sense that I'm an entrepreneur, really at heart. Started a company, voices.com, with my wife about 12 years ago. Just the two of us having an idea, which was, what if we could create an online marketplace where we were connecting advertising agencies and other creative producers with professional voiceover talent. And Stephanie was a voice talent at the time, myself as an audio engineer. And we were getting this work ourselves, but we were also finding that other voice talent wanted to get work through this small studio that we had. And we figured, why don't we put that online as a website and really facilitate these two transactions? And so that was the genesis of how the web platform voices.com is the company and how it began. And we really just stuck with that one little slice of the world, voiceovers, and doing our best to dominate that space. Okay, fantastic.
All right, Melissa, I think the audience is going to want to follow along with us a little bit. Can you let them know how to do that?
Yes, absolutely. If you would like to open your How to Make Your Number workbook, turn to the marketing strategy section and flip to the content strategy and planning phase.
All right, very good. All right, so let's jump into the questions here. So we're talking about content marketing, as a way to earn brand preference. So in your business, what reasons do you have for creating content, and how does it help your business?
Well, I think one of the first things every executive needs to consider is really the buying cycle that a prospect will go through. Now, we've all probably heard the times where a customer would say to us at the end of after they've made a purchase, "Oh, I wish I knew about you 5 years ago." So really, what's the disconnect there is that there was just no awareness. They may not have even known that your company existed, or even if your company existed, that you had a particular product offering. So the first phase of that buying cycle is just generating awareness, and content feeds right into that. From there, you're moving to acquisition, which is acquiring a lead and then converting into a customer. And that's more of the sales responsibility, the sales reps and those folks on that team to convert from the lead into a customer. But in terms of content marketing, it's really generating the awareness and giving, and then more importantly, giving that prospect the trust, the confidence that they have in that they might want to explore a little bit more about, are you a good fit for them? So first they know who you are. Now they're asking the questions of themselves, are you a good fit? Will you actually meet the needs that I might have?
Yeah. So David, in your opening when you were describing your company, Voices.com, I learned that you serve advertising agencies and that's your target audience. And that group probably has some very specific information needs. And of course, you want to create and distribute content to satisfy those needs. But sometimes our clients and listeners and viewers struggle with learning what the information needs are. So how did you learn about the information needs of your prioritized customers?
Well, there's a couple approaches. Certainly, if you already have a tool like Google Analytics installed on your website, looking for what are called organic search queries, that's a great way that's non-intrusive. You're not necessarily picking up the phone and having conversations with your customers, but you can see without any preconditions, what are they naturally doing? What questions are they typing in to Google that would ultimately get to your website? So I think that's gleaning information from analytics platforms that you already have, likely already installed in your organization. Next up would be having those conversations and asking questions. Even another option would be in the form of a survey, and something that we've done is I love these one question surveys. Let's not talking about 20 minutes. I'm talking about surely you can take 30 seconds to answer one question, and often we'll phrase it in the form of, what's one thing we could do that would knock your socks off? Or what's one piece of information that would be a game changer for you? Or what's your most urgent or burning question that you have before making a buying decision? So if you phrase it into something really simple and bite-sized, somebody might even be able to willing to answer that by clicking through an email that they're getting on their mobile device and filling out a one-question survey. So that's one of the other tools that we have. And then finally, to be able to kind of tap into the what are those burning questions, are just, again, running an ongoing log of basically, be it a shared spreadsheet or an internal, intranet, or we use Salesforce Chatter, which is a social network within the four walls at our company. Some kind of mechanism to capture those questions, which ultimately then get fed into what we call story ideas. Basically, it's, the marketing and content team really is loving. They want to answer real world problems and answer real world questions. And so those are three separate channels, if you will, that we use to draw that out of a prospective or an active customer and get it into the hands of somebody who can actually develop a meaningful solution.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, that's a great three ideas on, understanding what the information needs of your customers. Now, and once you do that, you now got to figure out, where do these customers go today to fulfill these information needs that we just discovered? Of course, coming to your websites and communication channels is one place to go, but there's probably several others, and you want to put your content where they're going to be. So how do you figure out where your customers go today to fulfill these information needs?
I love low-tech approaches to this. Let's try the bookstore, and let's go into the magazine rack. If there's a magazine on a topic, you can sure bet that there's a whole industry and a cottage industry about whatever topic that is. So if it's software, if it's travel, if it's adventure, backpacking, right through to knitting and everything imaginable, if there's a magazine on it, that's going to be a great source of authority. So trade journals, magazines, I'd like to find these kind of real world, and then you find the online world equivalents. So every magazine is going to have a website that's probably got a fair size audience, and that would be the fastest way to get to a target audience. Now, there's some more broad approaches, some trusted resources, like, for instance, entrepreneur.com, if you're, would be a great solution as well too, or a great source. Many of the listeners might be surprised to know that you can actually apply to contribute articles to some of, whether it's Inc. or entrepreneur.com or Fast Company. A lot of these do take inbound articles that are contributions. And what they like most is a bit of a formula, but it's a problem solution results approach to writing that story out. Whether you're talking about it from your own experience or problem that, positioning yourself as the guide and your customer as the hero. Hey, our customer had this problem. We developed a solution with them, and here's the results that ultimately they were successful for. Yeah. So there are some real tangible outlets that have wide audiences that you'd be able to tap into.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, this is probably a good time for a break. Melissa, I think you wanted to share something with the audience.
Yes, audience, I am very excited to personally extend an invitation to you to come visit us here in Dallas, Texas at our state-of-the-art executive briefing center, The Studio. For those of you who have aggressive revenue growth goals and want to get 3 months of work done in 3 days, come down here and visit us in Dallas, Texas. SBI designed this executive briefing center specifically to help you make your number faster than the industry and faster than your competitors. To learn more, go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/thestudio.
Yeah, the people that have been coming to the new executive briefing center, the sessions have been fantastic. We've been getting a lot done, so I hope the audience members take you up on that offer.
Very productive, yes.
All right, let's jump back into our questions here. And David, my next question for you is an internal question, which is regarding, the staff that you have allocated to content marketing, and how much of that effort is kind of internal versus what you might outsource. Because when we have this conversation with our clients and listeners and viewers about the importance of content marketing, they all say, yeah, I understand that, but I only have so many people, I only have so much money. So how do you handle this?
Well, we do make it a priority. We do recognize that the sales and marketing funnel, right at the top of the funnel, is content. I mean, really nothing happens until there's something that's shareable, whether it's shared through social or, we think of it as kind of inserted into search engines, if you will, getting it in Google and Bing. So there's definitely a big push on the for the content team. We actually have, just like in sales, they have targets. Almost think of it to the degree of a quota. And so for every writer, it's 20 stories, which is roughly a story a day. And we track those. So a story has an entire life cycle, just like a sales deal has a life cycle. The story life cycle starts with idea, moves to researching, then writing, and then published, and finally shared. And having a system that you can track, be it, again, something simple like a shared spreadsheet, or we've built an app on the force.com platform to be able to track this. Now we can report on it and dashboard and really encourage people and have visibility into the production life cycle of any piece of content, be it an article, a video, or a podcast. So right now, I mean, it's a pretty, and again, I don't want to make the listeners feel that it's a sophisticated system. It's just, we tend to be systems thinkers, and if we're going to do something right, we think, how do we do this 10x, 100x, if that was that kind of flow through?
Yeah.
But I think having a system for managing the life cycle of content is critically important. That way, now it's you can replicate it.
Yeah.
And so we've gone from one part-time writer in-house to 3 really, and 2 other content producers, one on graphics and somebody in video,
yeah.
and audio. So it's not a huge team per se, but you add that up, and next thing you know, you're realizing you're producing between 60 and 100 pieces of unique content a month, and it becomes very methodical and predictable. often the hardest part is coming up with ideas of what to write about next. And so that's circling back to what we just talked about. You got to have streams that are filling in that content pipeline.
Yeah. So I love the whole concept of, I guess a quota system, 20 stories, a story a day. And I love the way that you laid out kind of your framework, idea, research, writing, publish, sharing, and tracking that story, if you will, across a life cycle. I think that's a really valuable
and
piece of advice.
And at any given time, at any given time, Greg, I mean, we can look at how many stories are at each stage in the content pipeline, just like you would look at how many deals are at each stage of the deal pipeline. Yeah. And so we've taken a lot of the, best practices from a sales methodology and applied that to content marketing. Somebody owns the story. If you own the story, you get credit for the story. You celebrate the wins. You know that it got pushed out. So there's this real sense of accountability and contribution, that you're doing meaningful work that contributes to the overall success of the company.
Sure. Some of my clients have a version of what you just described deployed, and they're producing lots of content, 60, 100 unique pieces a month, which is great. And if we're trying to influence the search engines, that's obviously very critical. But where they kind of fall down is on the promotion side of things. So they do a great job on creating and producing content, but they might not get enough people to read it or listen to it or watch it. So how do you handle promotion in terms of, allocating dollars and allocating staff? If you've got 3 writers, what's their, I guess, peer group, if you will, on the promotion side?
Yeah, it's very similar. So on the promotion side, we call that demand generation, and so demand generation is across a number of disciplines. Really, this is a team of people who are responsible for getting that content into search, sharing it on social, including it in email for upcoming newsletters, and then any other display or remarketing campaigns as well that might drive kind of that mass or broad awareness. And particularly the search, social, and email, those are going to be your 3 most prominent, most highly trafficked, marketing channels, digital marketing channels that you want to have your content distributed into. So that we view those as kind of like we own or control how we're sharing that material through our social channels, and then separately. We do have a public relations team, which is a 3-person team, and they're more tasked and really commissioned with distributing content through what we would call earned media. Like we don't have control of it. We're pitching that article, and we're pitching it to entrepreneur.com or Huffington Post or Inc. magazine or a local newspaper. Or speaking engagements for an upcoming conference, as an example. So those are, that's kind of the difference when we talk about, owned media. We own our social and we own our blogs, and earned is it's still the same. It might be a very similar piece of content, but we've got to earn a way to get it placed. It's kind of more out of our control. Yeah. And again, to be candid, they also have a quota as well too. So it's the same idea. If we're going to put a responsibility on somebody to write the content, well then likewise, there needs to be somebody who's responsible for getting that content placed.
Yeah. Now, some of my listeners would absolutely love to have a 3-person PR team, especially a 3-person PR team that has a quota to get all this wonderful stuff placed. But they struggle with justifying the expense and coming up with a budget, because sometimes it's difficult to measure, especially if the burden of truth is to track it all the way to a revenue contribution. Sometimes things like PR is tough to do that. So I mean, you're the CEO of your company. You decided to invest in this. You're watching your P&L and your cash flows. How did you come to grips in your own mind that you should fund this?
Yep. Being kind of a math guy, as many of the listeners probably have put together, I mean, this is it's purely the numbers of it. So we said, look, we can either pay for this traffic on Google through Google AdWords and be paying, call it $3 or $4 a click. So basically, that's just a visitor that generates a page view on your site. Or what would the equivalent be for the average article? So the average article equivalent would be about 1,000 visitors for every article. So call it the value of an article to us is between $3,000 and $4,000. And therefore, times call it 20 a month. Next thing you know, we're generating $60,000 of value. And that we felt that we are well justified in investing in content production as opposed to just giving to the Google machine in terms of advertising. So that was the way the way that we approached it was if we had to spend this money on ads or if we could spend it to get traffic another way, how could we do that? And so that was, we found that was a very meaningful approach. And that's also how we came up with this kind of 20 stories per month articles to be written and 20 to be placed.
Yeah. I love the math approach, and if you annualize that out, $60,000 a month, call it $700,000-800,000 a year in quote value created, and then you back into what your profit expectation may be, and therefore what of that $700,000-800,000, what are you willing to invest, to go get that. So that was really helpful. All right, this is probably a good natural breaking point here, and I'm going to get my thoughts together for our last segment. Melissa, I think you had something that you wanted to share with the team.
Yes, I think there are probably several of you who want to know how to up your content marketing game. So you don't have to go at it alone. You can enlist the help of the SBI team of experts. Consider spending time with those experts in a workshop. To learn more about the workshop, go to sbi.tips/2017 workbook and get a feel for the content provided in that workshop.
Okay, very good. All right, David, let me come back to you and let's talk about tools. So some of our clients use content marketing tools like editorial calendars and production schedules, etc. You mentioned shareable spreadsheets a few times. Given how I guess disciplined you are in this area, any particular tools that you think people should be aware of?
Yeah, I think, great question. I think you definitely need a system overall of how, if you're going to take content seriously, some type of production system, meaning to kind of track these stories through their life cycle. And then you need a publishing system. So the most popular one on the planet being WordPress, if you're going to publish a blog or a podcast or videos on an ongoing cycle. There's a ton of great features built into WordPress, which is why it's broadly become the industry standard in terms of a content management system. And then, absolutely, we do have an editorial calendar, not on to the granularity of what's happening every day, but more of a theme for the month. And the reason why we've taken this approach is because we'll say, hey, this month, we're going to be writing about, for instance, in our world, 30-second radio commercials and why they're relevant to the listeners, and so that we can talk everything about taking long summer drives to where people listen to their radio. Like there's a whole bunch of angles that you can take there. But the idea is that we know that if we set up a theme, there's going to be a newsletter, and we need material for the newsletter. So we're going to be writing content that blog articles that ultimately get into the newsletter. And so by the time our customers have received the newsletter, they might have even seen these stories once or twice. And if somebody were to click through, there might even be a few comments. Maybe there's a conversation started. They would see some shares already in place. So the newsletter is actually the last part of that kind of monthly content cadence. We write it, we share it, we promote it ahead of time, and then send out the newsletter as more of a recap of what happened for the month. Yeah. So that's been our approach that really kind of bridges both the editorial calendar and then a production cycle. But there's definitely some things like moving to maybe more audio podcasts or video podcasts. We definitely work ahead, by a couple months. Podcasts in particular, you want to have a few of those in the can, especially if you've made a commitment to your listeners that you're going to have be on a weekly cycle. People are expecting, I've been there many times. Hey, when's the next episode going to come out? And to live up to that brand promise, if you will, of your podcast, you want to make sure that you have a backlog, if you will, of a few of them that are already done, so that you're really just clicking publish on the day of. Yeah. And, you align that with your monthly editorial calendar, you'll know that that you can be booking people well in advance of upcoming episodes and upcoming themes. So that's how we handle text-based written content for the newsletter, as well as tying that also in together with the audio and video podcast that would run.
Yep. Some people have gone to the point where they've acquired some third-party software that automates a lot of these workflows. Examples are like Kapost and Contently and tools like that. My audience often asks me, when's the right time to do that? Can I continue to bootstrap this and do it with, things like shareable spreadsheets and collaboration tools, etc.? Or, do I need to get sophisticated and go to these automated workflow tools? Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I do like to build out systems for scale. We often start with my personal philosophy is we often start off with the no-tech solution, which is, as I said, doing market research by going to see how many magazines are in on a particular topic and what are people writing about and what are good headlines that are in magazine. Like there's, people watching, asking informal interviews. Like there's a lot of low-tech, or I should say no-tech ways to do it. Then you move to the low-tech way, which is a spreadsheet. And only once you're realizing, wow, I wish it did a whole lot more. And when you need to move to adding on that automation or scheduling, that's when you need a dedicated, sophisticated system. So I would encourage people to consider taking a bit of a baby step approach to this. I think you've got to make the leap into producing content. People are asking questions into Google either or verbally into Siri and doing voice-based searches, or they're typing in questions. They're looking for answers. Isn't that what we all put into Google, is a question looking for an answer, or a problem looking for a solution? So I think there needs to be a commitment to creating content. But those type of really robust, feature-rich systems probably come into play when you're producing multiple pieces of content per day. And until you ramp up to that point, I would just be concerned that it feels like overkill and people get overwhelmed and then just dial back and then miss out on that whole opportunity to be able to meet their customers at that early on awareness stage. So take your time, make the commitment to move into content, but get there slowly but surely on building out the tools that you need to be successful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, no tech, low tech, and then automate it if you need it, I think is pretty good advice. All right.
Totally.
We got time for maybe one more question. And I saved the doozy for last, which is ultimately, how do you measure the effectiveness of your content?
Yeah, well, we, I think one of the themes for this session today has been to take a very systematic, methodical approach. So our approach to actually measuring the effectiveness of the content, there's two things that matter to us, and we look at it more of on a channel or effort base as opposed to an individual piece of content. But for instance, we look at visitors, so how many people are interested, and then how many what we call signups, basically, which is equivalent to a lead. Yep. So that we feel is very much in the realm or under the ownership of the marketing team, if you will, generating traffic and converting traffic into a lead. At that point, it's really handed off into the sales team, and we need to educate them on what we're doing to generate these qualified leads. But that's how we measure it. And as I said, it is on a channel by channel basis. So how effective is the blog at generating visits and conversions? Same thing with any of the, our efforts from entrepreneur.com or Inc. It's the same idea there, traffic and conversions.
Yep, very good. All right, well, David, that was a great demonstration on how to earn brand preference by satisfying the information needs of your target customers and prospects. So I really want to thank you for coming on the show. Your answers were fantastic. You're very sophisticated in this area, and congratulations on all of your success, and thanks for contributing to our body of work.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, and I want to thank the SBI audience for tuning in. Last month, we hit a milestone that I'm proud of, and that is we crossed over 2,500 unique pieces of content produced from the podcast, the articles, the videos that contribute to this body of sales and marketing thought leadership, and we're doing that now on a monthly basis. So we're really growing a robust knowledge base. So the continued response from executives and the willingness of thought leaders such as David is really, giving back to the community, and it's encouraging us to continue to publish this content. So thank you for all of your continued support. Melissa, I think there's one more thing you wanted to advise the audience on, so would you share that with them, please?
Greg, yes, speaking of the unique content that SBI has to offer, audience, we want you to be able to personalize your SBI content experience. So go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/register, and you can register for the topics that interest you and how often you would like to receive them.
Yeah, that's good advice. Because we're producing so much content, if you're not careful, we can overwhelm you. So please take the time to create an account and tell us what's important to you, and we'll do our best to make sure that we remain relevant. All right, that's it for today. As always, I wish you the best of luck as you try and make your number.